I never imagined that a quiet, uneventful evening could mark the beginning of a storm I'd never see coming. My name is Arman, and for 4 years I've shared a peaceful, if not entirely passionate marriage with Nina. We met, young, married, quickly, and built a life grounded in routine. There was a kind of quiet comfort in our relationship, a rhythm we rarely disrupted. Nina was the kind of woman who could command a room without raising her voice. Intelligent, composed, affectionate, when it mattered. Our love wasn't fiery, but it was reliable. We didn't argue. We didn't smother each other. We just existed together in an understanding that felt safe, predictable. When she told me she'd be visiting her parents for the weekend, I didn't think much of it. Her nephew, Ayan, was coming to the city for a few days and needed a place to stay. Naturally, she asked if he could crash at our place. I agreed before she even finished the question. Ayan had always struck me as an exceptionally sharp kid. At 21, he carried himself with a maturity beyond his years. A final-year literature student, he had a quick wit, a thoughtful way of speaking, and an effortless charm that made people gravitate toward him. I'd only met him a handful of times during family gatherings, but he'd left a lasting impression. He arrived on a rainy Friday evening. The scent of petrichor clung to his clothes as he stepped into the apartment, tall and slightly leaner than I remembered, with eyes that seemed to be always observing, always a few thoughts ahead. "Uncle Arman," he smiled, dropping his backpack. "Thanks for letting me stay. I promise I won't be a pain." "You're not a guest, Ayan," I replied, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "You're family." He grinned, that boyish, effortless kind of grin. It struck me how much he'd grown, how easily he filled the space with energy I hadn't realized the apartment lacked. Dinner was light. Naina had prepared enough food to last us the weekend, and we ate quietly, the occasional flash of lightning lighting up the kitchen. Ayan spoke of his thesis, of poetry, of how much he admired writers who could take something ordinary and make it feel immortal. There was something captivating about how he saw the world, how he spoke of emotions like they were tangible things to be held and examined. As we finished our meal, he leaned back and sighed. "It's nice to be here. It's been a long time since I felt at peace." I didn't know what he meant then. Not fully. But I remember nodding, offering a half-smile, unaware that those words would echo louder than any thunder that weekend. And as the rain tapped against the windows and Ayan settled into the guest room, I returned to the quiet of my own. I didn't know the storm had already arrived, only that, for the first time in a long while, the silence felt different. Not empty, but expectant. The next evening unfolded with surprising ease. Nina had called earlier, her voice light with the comfort of being home. She asked if Ayan was settling in well, and I assured her everything was fine. It was the truth, in the simplest sense. But by nightfall, that truth had begun to blur. Ayan offered to cook. I laughed at first, expecting instant noodles or some thrown-together student experiment. Instead, he crafted a quiet masterpiece. Pan-seared chicken with rosemary, sautéed vegetables, even a red wine reduction. "It helps me think," he said, setting down the plates. "Cooking's kind of like writing. You have to trust the ingredients to speak." We ate at the dining table instead of the couch. The conversation meandered from mundane to deeply personal. He told me about his final-year project, a study on forbidden love in postmodern literature. The way he spoke, his words laced with passion and restraint, reminded me of how I used to dream before the routines of marriage dulled my edges. After dinner, we moved to the living room. He poured us each a glass of wine, and we sat, the TV murmuring some forgotten film neither of us really watched. The storm outside had returned, steady and rhythmic, a metronome to our unfolding dialogue. It was Ayan who steered the conversation, inward. "Do you ever feel like you've built a life so carefully you forgot to leave space for yourself in it?" he asked. The question landed like a stone in a still pond. I didn't answer immediately. I didn't need to. The silence between us was heavy with truths neither of us had spoken aloud before. He leaned into the armrest, his gaze fixed ahead, his voice softer now. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just pretending to be who everyone expects me to be, like I've rehearsed every version of myself for different rooms. I nodded slowly, understanding more than I wanted to admit. I think we all do that, I said. Some of us just forget which version is real. He looked at me then, not with judgment, but with something far more dangerous, recognition. It wasn't physical. Nothing about that night crossed a line that could be photographed or condemned. But there was a shift, unspoken yet undeniable. When he leaned slightly closer, letting his shoulder graze mine, I didn't move away. I didn't want to. The moment held a strange, quiet weight, like standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. Hours passed without notice. At some point, Ayan fell asleep against my side, breath slow and even. I didn't wake him. I stayed still, my body warm with contact, my thoughts frozen in the quiet chaos of what I was feeling. Outside, the rain pressed harder against the windows, as if trying to wash away something neither of us dared name. Inside, I sat wide awake, knowing I had just crossed a threshold I could never uncross. Morning crept in without mercy. Light spilled across the floor, peeling back the shadows that had sheltered us just hours ago. Ayan stirred beside me on the couch, stretching slowly before blinking into awareness. He looked up at me, a faint, sleepy smile playing on his lips. So casual, so unbothered, as if the night hadn't shifted something seismic between us. "Thanks for last night," he murmured, rubbing the back of his neck. "I haven't felt that seen in a long time." I managed a nod, my throat too tight for words. Something in me recoiled at his calmness while another part longed to reach for it. Wished I could feel as untroubled. I wanted to believe it. Was innocent. That we were just two men caught in a rare moment of emotional honesty. But denial, I was beginning to learn, is a fragile thing. He disappeared into the guest room to freshen up. I stood in the kitchen, hands trembling slightly as I poured coffee, haunted by my reflection in the window, half my face hidden by the morning glare, the other looking like a man I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed. Naina. Her name felt heavier. "Now," I answered, forcing lightness into my voice. She spoke with warmth, asked about our plans for the day, told me about a recipe she wanted to try when she got back. I listened, answered when necessary, all the while staring at the guest room door like it was holding back a secret I'd already let in. When Ayan emerged, backpack slung over one shoulder, he gave me that same half-smile. "I've got some work to do at the library," he said. "I'll be out most of the day." I nodded, unsure if I was relieved or disappointed. As he reached for the door, he hesitated, turned back, and looked me straight in the eye. "You don't have to pretend around me, you know." Then he left. The words echoed long after the door clicked shut. What did he mean? That he saw through me? That he felt the same confusion, the same pull? Or was he simply offering understanding in the only way he knew how? I stood in the hallway for a long time, the silence pressing in. The walls of my home, once familiar and still, now seemed to whisper every unspoken thought. Guilt clawed at my chest, but beneath it, buried and breathing, was something darker. Want, need, memory. The emotional betrayal was done. My heart had wandered in the night, found solace where it shouldn't, and now refused to return to its rightful place. I didn't text Ayan. I didn't try to make sense of it. But I carried the weight of that night like a stone in my pocket. Always there, always heavy. And as the hours passed in stillness, I knew one thing for certain. Something in me had changed. Irrevocably. Weeks passed. Life resumed its shape, but nothing felt the same. I returned to work, slept beside Nana, spoke when spoken to. But inside, I had grown quiet, not from peace but from a conflict I no longer knew how to name. Ayan didn't come back. Not to stay, not to visit. He remained in the city. I knew that much from Nana's updates. She'd mention a brief phone call or forward a photo he'd shared of some book he loved. But he never reached out to me. No messages, no explanations. Just absence where a storm had once been. At first, I convinced myself that distance was mercy. Maybe he understood what we'd come close to and chose to bury it for both our sakes. But as days melted into nights, a strange bitterness grew in me. A hollow ache, not just of longing, but of abandonment. He had stirred something in me, and vanished without warning, leaving me to wrestle with the consequences alone. One night, sleepless and restless, I found myself scrolling through my phone. Buried in old message threads, I stumbled upon one from Ayan, sent weeks earlier, the day after he left. "You're not the only one who's scared of feeling something wrong." The screen blurred as I stared at those words, my chest tightening, with something sharp and familiar. Fear, recognition, regret. He had felt it too, and yet had chosen silence over confrontation. Maybe that was his way of protecting me, or maybe he just couldn't carry the weight of it all. I looked over at Nana, fast asleep, her hand curled gently against her cheek. The woman who had trusted me without hesitation, who had asked me to look after her nephew with the same confidence. She reserved for everyday things, car keys, grocery lists, weather forecasts. What would she say if she knew that nothing physical had happened wouldn't matter? I had stepped out of my marriage in the most dangerous way, by letting someone else occupy my heart, even for a night. I stood from the bed and walked to the window. The city below pulsed, with quiet life, streetlights painting soft gold across the pavement. I felt old all of a sudden, tired, not just from the guilt, but from carrying a version of myself I no longer understood. In that stillness, I made a decision, not a grand one, not a promise to confess or seek closure, just a choice to live with what I had done, to let it remain unspoken, a private scar beneath the skin of our marriage. She'd never know what happened that night. Not really, but I would. And that knowledge, sharp, silent, unshakable, would follow me through every conversation, every glance, every mundane day that tried to convince me everything was fine.